Hey everyone, welcome to Mountain Beast Mysteries. I came across a very interesting Bigfoot report online that I thought I would share with you guys because it happened very close to where the Patterson-Gimlin film was shot. The Patterson-Gimlin film, the most famous piece of Bigfoot footage ever recorded back in 1967. This encounter, though, happened in 1961, so 6 years prior, by a couple of bear hunters. These are younger guys. They went up on the Hoopa Reservation to hunt bear, and they end up having a frightening experience at night where this creature was circling their tent. Now, I guess it's possible even that the creature that they encountered was even the exact creature filmed in the Patterson-Gimlin film, Patty as they call her. It's possible, but we'll never know. It's fun to speculate things of that nature. I'm going to read the report to you guys just as it is online, so it's not very PC. They use the word Indian a lot, so I'm just reading it as it is. Just an FYI if you are offended by things of that nature. But let's get into the report and let me know what you guys think of it in the comments down below. It's also worth noting that the people who were experiencing this encounter, they weren't familiar with Bigfoot at all while it happened. It wasn't until later on, like when the Patterson footage became famous, that they put two and two together and were like, oh my, like that's probably like exactly what we were experiencing, one of these creatures. But let's get into the story here. This incident happened 41 years ago when I was 19 years old. My friend and I were bear hunting up in Humboldt County on the Hoopa Indian Reservation. It was in March or April. Back then, bear hunting was open all year long in Humboldt County, and there were no limits. We were from Southern California, and were totally unfamiliar with the area. We stopped in a town on the Trinity River. I believe the name of the town may have been Willow Creek, but I'm not sure. Anyway, we met some Indians in town and asked them if they knew of any good places to hunt bear. They said they didn't, but added that there was an old man in the grocery store who may be able to help us. The Indians pointed to an old blue 1950 Buick parked in front of the store and told us that the car belonged to the old man, so we waited there until he came out. When he came back to his car, we introduced ourselves and asked him if he knew of any good places to hunt bear. He told us it was pretty good up on the Hoopa Reservation and gave us some general directions. We ended up on an old deserted dirt road high in the mountains in my friend's dad's 1949 four-door Chevy. We kept going up until we hit snow. We started to fishtail, and the right rear wheel went over the side. We set the handbrake and got out of the car to evaluate the situation. We decided to get the bumper jack out of the trunk and jack the car up and then push it off the jack back onto the road. The plan worked and all four wheels were back on the road. We backed down the road until we came to a place where we could turn around. By now it was dusk, and we decided we'd better pitch our tent before it got too dark. At the turnaround spot next to the road, we saw a big pine tree and decided to set up under the tree. By the time we pitched the four-man umbrella tent, it was dark. We put all of our sleeping gear and firearms in the tent and lied down, and were talking for about 10 minutes when we heard the first grunt outside the tent. We both pretended that we didn't hear anything and kept talking. Then it did it again, and this time we both stopped, and I asked my friend if he heard that. He said he did, and he said he heard it the first time as well. I said, yeah, me too. Now we both shut up and listened. We could hear it circling the tent because the ground was covered with bark, and we could hear the bark crunching under its feet. We could also hear its very loud breathing. By the sound of its footsteps and its breathing, we figured that whatever it was huge, and it was walking on 2 feet. It circled the tent several times, and we decided that one of us should go out and see what it was. Neither of us wanted to go out because we were scared, so we decided to flip a coin to see which one of us would go. My friend lost. Then I suggested that before he went out, it may be wise to fire the .44 Magnum out of the tent flap first. He concurred and stuck the barrel out of the flap and fired 5 shots. We then both went out. He had the .44 and I held the light. We looked all over and didn't see a thing. We went back in the tent, laid down, and were trying to figure out what had just been outside of the tent. We had never heard of Sasquatch at that point. We had been talking for about 5 or 10 minutes when we heard a very loud, high-pitched scream that lasted for about 5 seconds and sounded like it was about 50 to 100 yards away. We looked at each other and asked, what the heck was that? That was one heck of a scream. We talked a little longer and then we went to sleep. The rest of the night was uneventful. We arose the next morning and went outside and looked around the circumference of the tent for footprints. We couldn't see any because the ground was covered with many years' accumulation of bark from the huge pine tree we were camped under. We had wondered many times what it was that had been outside our tent that night and often talked about it. Then one day several years later, I happened to be in the barber shop getting a haircut. I picked up a magazine and it had the now famous controversial picture of the female Sasquatch on the cover. I read the article, and in the article there was a map with an X on it. The X indicated where the picture was supposedly taken. The X on the map wasn't far from where we were camped that night. That's when I made the connection, and since then, after reading about many encounters, I'm pretty well convinced that the animal we'd heard outside our tent 41 years ago was a Sasquatch. Quite an interesting encounter. This thing walks up to the tent just like in many other Bigfoot reports and is like lurking around outside the tent, just investigating these people. Like, they weren't planning on being in that area, and they just by chance, have this strange experience. That's how a lot of these encounters happen. People find themselves down a road they, were unfamiliar with, and they're parked there in the night, and something weird happens. This is something that happens so many times in Bigfoot reports. These things just happen to come upon these people. Like, they end up finding these people and they freak them out because they behave in very weird ways. And not only was it lurking around the tent, but after they fired those shots and it took off, it let out a scream that was unlike anything they've heard before. And, we have many recordings floating around of Bigfoot vocalizations. And that's, one of the things that they do is they make these screams and weird howls. Seems kind of weird for a creature that wants to remain hidden to be making calls like that, but who knows why they actually do it. Maybe it's just an intimidation thing to scare people out of the area, out of their territory. But these men, they don't ever get an actual visual of the creature. They just hear it. And, they can sense it outside their tent. And that's what a lot of Bigfoot reports are. Like, people will report never actually having a visual, sighting of the creature, but they'll know that they're around. They can hear the footsteps, and they can usually tell that they're walking on 2 feet. I know there's no way that they can confirm that it's Sasquatch, but it has a lot of the telltale characteristics, of Sasquatch behavior. So I think it's a very interesting report. I like reports that, happened before the Patterson film was shot, because this is when Bigfoot wasn't really mainstream and a lot of people weren't even aware of the subject. So to have encounters that happened prior to that is really cool, because, there's a less incentive for people to hoax it or to make up fake stories and whatnot. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this story. We'll see you next time on Mountain Beast Mysteries.